Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and for those who have stuck around with the series for a very long time, welcome back. This is my reading week from the 14th until the 19th of October. I read 4 books this week, 2 young adult and 2 adult books, a total of 1,769 pages, and my yearly reading total is up to 307 books. I'm super happy with the reading I did this week, although people may notice it's been less than in previous weeks. That's because one, the books that I was reading took a little bit longer to get through, but also there's been a lot going on. I'll be honest, it's been a bit of a tough week, but I'm here. I got through some books that I was really excited to read. I enjoyed them all, and that is the most important thing. The first book that I read this week was Capturing the Devil by Kerri Maniscalco. This is book 4 in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. It is also the final book in the series. It is a 2019 release from Little Brown Books, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. If you have been following my channel for any length of time, you know that I adore this series. It is a young adult historical fiction murder mystery series, and while I cannot vouch for the accuracy of the historical references in it, because historical fiction is not my thing, I just happen to enjoy it in this particular series, I just find it wonderful, and there is awesome banter between the two main characters, Audrey Rose and Thomas Creswell. And even though I'm sad that this series is over, I am glad that we got the ending that we did. It feels like a complete series. So obviously being book 4 and the final book, it's sort of hard to talk about the series without giving away too many spoilers, but essentially in Stalking Jack the Ripper, we meet Audrey Rose for the first time. She is a young lady of society, however she would like to become a medical examiner. And her uncle, who is a medical examiner, accepts her as an apprentice, and through investigating the Jack the Ripper crimes sweeping London, she meets her uncle's other apprentice, Thomas Creswell, and the two have sort of a rocky relationship to start off with, but Thomas is amazing and my favourite thing of the entire series. His quips are just awesome. He pushes the boundaries so much in terms of propriety and all that sort of thing in this time period. Book 2, which is Hunting Prince Dracula, the two characters end up in Romania. They're still studying the medical sciences, and there's a bit of a Vlad the Impaler sort of history going on in the background and how Thomas is related to that. In Escaping from Houdini, Thomas and Audrey and her uncle are traveling from Romania to America, and there they come across a traveling troupe of performers. And then finally in Capturing the Devil, all the main characters are in New York, and suddenly there is a series of murders taking place that resemble the Jack the Ripper crimes in book 1, and so we come full circle as they're forced to question whether or not they actually truly solved that crime, and it is just fabulous. Audrey Rose and Thomas's relationship comes to a head. We learn more about Thomas's background, and it was just absolutely a fun ride from start to finish. It's one of those books that's easy to read, characters that are easy to enjoy and like, with, you know, a bloody murder to solve, so really what's not to like? So then I read Dark Dawn by J. Kristoff, which is book 3 and the final book in the Nevernight Chronicles. This is a 2019 release from Harper Voyager, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Being the final book in an adult fantasy series, there is no way that this is young adult, so please do not consider anything in the Nevernight Chronicles young adult. And I know a lot of people have been talking about this recently. Just because J. Kristoff writes young adult does not mean everything he writes is young adult, and this is most certainly not. What it is good reading, if you like this sort of thing. So most of you know that I'm not a big fantasy reader. This took me longer than most books to read. Like normally a book this size I could get through in a day or two just because of the way that I read, but this took a few extra days because of everything that was going on, and also because there's a lot of content to get through. So essentially this book is really the culmination of everything that's come before it, thankfully being the concluding book. Mia has finally been reunited with her brother, and things are not going well, and it is really about her finding out about her heritage, about where the demons come from, about finding her place amidst characters who are loyal to her, who love her, who distrust her, who have questions about who she is and what she's capable of, and then she also uncovers what her purpose actually is. And so everything sort of happens. It's very violent, it's very bloody, there's lots of weird magic stuff going on. There's a lot of traveling on ships, which I don't know, recently I find that really fascinating to read about, even though I have absolutely no desire to travel anywhere on a ship. But we get some new characters and they were delightful, and we also get all of the old characters who are back. And I think in this particular book, Mercurio and Aurelius were my favorite characters to read about this time around. There is some awesome banter in here as well between different characters, and even though the ending ended the way that it did, and I won't say how because spoilers, but even though the ending ended the way that it did, there is a real wonderful sense of conclusion, and so I didn't feel cheated at all by what happened. It could have gone differently, but I don't think it was a bad ending by any means. I think it was a wonderful wrap up to a wonderful series. And guys, I'm one of those weird people who really likes reading the footnotes in this book because I really like the narration style. This is a fantasy series I can get behind. The third book that I read this week is Lair of Dreams, which is book 2 in the Diviners series by Libba Bray. This was published in 2015 by Allen and Unwin, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I did read it as an ebook as I'm reading the entire series. I am really, really tempted though when the final book comes out to get the entire series as a set, because I think that would be really nice because I'm actually really enjoying the series. I don't know if I'm going to do it very much justice explaining it because it is essentially an urban historical fiction urban fantasy set in New York, and we follow a whole host of characters who have different abilities, and the people with these abilities call themselves diviners. So in the first book we really are introduced to this world through Evie, who is a girl from Ohio who's come to New York because she's causing a few scandals in her hometown, so her parents ship her off to live with her uncle, and there she begins to discover how to use her abilities more effectively. She can read objects and find out the history behind them. She crosses paths with a lot of people in this first book: Jericho, Sam, Theda, Henry, Memphis, and in Lair of Dreams, all of these characters have sort of gone on their own little journeys between the first book and the second book, and now Evie is quite famous. The world knows about diviners, and yet there is something happening in New York where people are falling sick with a sleeping sickness, so they're falling asleep and not waking up. The residents of Chinatown are being blamed for it, so there's a lot of racist undertones to the book, but it's done in such a way that highlights the fact that those things existed rather than perpetuating the racist stereotypes. It's really about showcasing the fact that these things happened and they were as in your face and as brutal as they are in the book, which I actually really appreciate because there's not too many books that try not to sugarcoat what was going on. And the Chinese residents of Chinatown have this superstition that it is a ghost who is haunting the city and thus causing the sleeping sickness. So the diviners end up investigating. They get unintentionally sucked into sort of this ghost hunting mission, and eventually this sleeping sickness threatens some of their group and they become truly, truly invested in resolving it. And I just love it because it's paranormal, urban fantasy in a historical fiction setting, and it's just delightful. It is gripping. It is a long book. It's over 600 pages, but you keep wanting to turn the page and find out what's going to happen next. I was watching the live show for Lair of Dreams that there's a readathon going on for them at the moment. Those hosts of the readathon who had read it before were talking about how Libba Bray is foreshadowing so much in this book, and you can see that as well as you're reading because there's hints of things that haven't come through yet, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the story goes. So I really enjoyed this series, and next month I will be reading Before the Devil Breaks You for sure. Finally, I reread Her Halloween Treat by Tiffany Reese, which is an adult romance book. It was released in 2016 by Mills and Boon Blaze, so it is the very adult line of Mills and Boon. And this time around I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think I dropped it down. Still a good book, still entertaining. It is very short. It's basically novella length. It is the first book in the Men at Work series. It follows Joey, who has just found out that the man that she was dating for 2 years was actually married, and so she has run back home to her hometown in the Pacific Northwest, and she is going there to celebrate her brother's wedding, but she's also still grieving the loss of this relationship that she's only just discovered, and she's also beating herself up over not realizing that he was married, even though totally not her fault. When she gets to her family's cabin on the lakes, as she runs into her brother's childhood friend Chris, who has been fixing up the cabin for her brother, and they've known each other their whole lives. Always got along really well, and they start catching up and flirting, and then one thing leads to another, and the whole thing is it's like 160 pages long, so the relationship goes like that really quickly. But it was fun, it was enjoyable. It's very smutty, so don't read it if you are not interested in that sort of thing, but I reread it because it's a Halloween themed read, and why not? And it was short and it was quick, and I needed something fluffy for my brain after reading really intense fantasies, murder mysteries, and urban fantasy stories for the last week, because it's heavy, guys. Need something light. So those are the books that I have read in the last 7 days. Well, imagine, like, I'm sure Lair of Dreams is like that big. It's a nice pile, really. In the comments below, let me know if you have read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them, or alternatively, what have you been reading over the last 7 days? I would love to hear your recommendations. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.